I'm Martyn, and joining me this week I have Chris Walker-Thomson.
Hello.
And Sam Michael.
Hello again.
So, gentlemen, I thought we should talk about The Curse of Fatal Death. Did you both see this on original broadcast?
I don't think I did. I remember catching it at some point, but it was, I think it might have been on UK Gold around like the 40th anniversary. But before that, I saw the video cassette of it. Never cleared the shelf at the sort of, I would like to say it was popular enough to be in Wharf's. I think it was like something like MVC or something like that. And I never got it. And I sort of wondered what it was and then eventually did see it.
How about you, Sam? You say you saw it?
Yeah, I definitely remember where I was because I was on a school trip to Rossagwalia in Wales. So I would have been 10 or 11. We weren't allowed telly for the whole week, but we were allowed to watch Comic Relief. Our like year group were allowed to watch Comic Relief on the Friday night, and it was on there. I remember it being on. I think we only stayed up to a certain amount of time, so I only saw the episode 1 and 2 and then watched 3 and 4 when I got home. I remember watching it on initial broadcast. I remember watching it as well with a lot of kids who weren't Doctor Who fans, but still found it funny. You know, it was Mr. Bean mucking around and the baddie from the world. Tomorrow Never Dies. So it was quite cool, and people kind of found it funny. And I remember being a Doctor Who fan and enjoying it sort of on both levels as well. Yeah, I remember watching it and really enjoying it.
See, I'm the old man of the podcast because when this broadcast, I was like 17, and I remember watching like 3 minutes of it and thinking, "What is this?" and just turning it off.
Little did I know the future. Maybe you did have an inkling of the future.
Yeah.
That this was going to be the template for a good 5 to 7 years of the show.
That's exactly it.
Let's talk about this. It's written
it.
by Stephen Moffat, and it foreshadows a lot of the Moffat era.
Oh, it does. It really does.
It was alarming, isn't it? He's still playing the same joke that he made all these years ago.
There's two ways you can view this. I think as a classic Doctor Who fan, it's great. It's a really great parody of Doctor Who. It's loyal to the joke. It's not just like there was a lot of sort of sketch shows that used to do Doctor Who jokes. So there was things like the Lenny Henry show, which just played on the same jokes. So the Daleks can't go up the stairs. Yeah. Cybermen are a bit like Margaret Thatcher. Yeah. They run down corridors. The Doctor never gets off with the girls. So therefore, if they show them getting off, that's quite funny. The same old sketches, you know. And then this was a really well thought out parody of the classic series of Doctor Who. You've got kind of, why doesn't the Doctor just keep going back in time and changing things, and then the Master goes back, and it's really funny ideas, and you know, communicating by farts, and what the Daleks, the phrase "I'll explain later." It's a really nicely done parody. But then you view it from a new series, Doctor Who, and you think, right, so basically, has Stephen Moffat just made 6-7 years of Doctor Who this one joke? Because a lot of that does appear. You've got kind of the Master and the Doctor as opposite sexes getting off with each other. You've got making rude jokes about areas of the Daleks. You know, the idea of just keep going back in time and switching things, that especially in the Matt Smith era, the kind of popping back and forward, which I remember he did in the Christmas Carol episode. And you just think, and now you watch it as a new Doctor Who fan and you go, oh God, this at the time, which was a good parody, has now become the regular series.
Stephen Moffat has he does have a sense of humour, but it is really the same sort of jokes you'd sort of joke about with your mates around it. That's how I suspected the entirety of his era was written. I always joked it was just him turning to Mark Gatiss and just having a laugh, you know, and and just going, "Mark, I've got a really funny idea for this bit. What do you think of that?" He goes, "Oh, that's marvelous, Stephen." You know, and it would just be about them just saying, "Yeah, that's a." I mean, like, there were some gags where you just don't feel you need to. It's like, we all know Doctor Who's got its shit moments. Like, I was watching Invasion of the Dinosaurs the other day, and I was like, they were really, just bless them, they were optimistic. I mean, we can all make jokes about it, but why make the same joke as everyone else is doing? Just get on with it. If you start... That's the problem I found with his era, was that it came very much, everything was pretty meta, and it just always threw you out of it to remind you you're watching Doctor Who.
I blame Bill and Ted for that. In The Curse of Fatal Death, the one thing that had done timey-wimey stuff before this was Bill and Ted, when Ted says, "Oh, we just have to remember to go back and leave the keys for ourselves." That's here where he's like, "Oh, I went back and bribed the architect. And I went back even further and bribed the architect." That is just Bill and Ted.
There was something else that was in my mind I was about to blame as well. And one part of it, and I know we're kind of getting a little bit away. Well, actually, no, I suppose it does work with Fatal Death, but that scene of we went back and bribed the architect thing reminds me of, I think, one of the scenes that's most like that in the new series. I think it's the Pandorica opens when the Doctor's going back and forward, and he's got a fez on, and then he's holding a thing, and then he says to Rory, "What did I look like? Oh, you were holding that broom." So he grabs the broom, then he goes back and does that. And it reminds me of, have you seen the Inquisitor episode of Red Dwarf?
Yeah.
Where Crichton goes back and he goes, right, now I've got to say this and I've got to tell you this. And for some reason, my last words are thingy. And like, it's that sort of thing that he's like, right, it's fixed in time, therefore I've got to hold this broom because that's how you saw me holding a broom. And it's an interesting idea, and I think probably lots of people have thought about that in Doctor Who before. Well, why doesn't he just appear back here and stuff like that? And it's always been sort of stopped. Any kind of plot holes have always been written off as, well, the Doctor's a lord of time and he knows when he's breaking it and when he's not, which is a fine excuse. I've always been happy with that. Why can't he save Adric? Well, because there's set times and things like that, and sometimes he can muck about, and that I'm absolutely fine with that. I think a lot of the time, the problem with Stephen Moffat's Doctor Who, and this again goes back to kind of his thing, he's a very good comedy writer. And I've always wondered why he does all these projects when really I think, do you know what would be really good for Stephen Moffat is to just sit and do a really good comedy film. Like you could do a Richard Curtis and just write a fantastic rom-com or something like. You look at something like Coupling, there's some really clever episodes in there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
One of my favorite sitcom episodes of all time is when I think it's the character of Jeff is trying to get off with a Greek woman, and he can't speak Greek and she can't speak English, and they kind of try and communicate and it doesn't really work, and you get the full scene and it's really funny, and then you get the scene again, but this time you're getting it from her point of view, so we can understand her but we can't understand him, and the whole scene plays out again, but you're getting laughs in different places, and comedy wise that's genius. And you think that's so clever. And I think, why are you wasting your time trying to sort of dick about with things like Doctor Who and Sherlock? Just chill out and just write a really good comedy. And I think that was my problem with Moffat. He never really took Doctor Who very seriously. And a lot of people say, no, there's lots of serious moments. And I go, no, don't mix up serious moments with epic moments, because that's what he tried to do. They say, oh, well, Rory and Amy and the angel scene where she leaves, that's sad. It's not that sad. It's epic. They rank up the music. It's a bit overly dramatic. It's not sad. I mean, what's sad is like Joe saying goodbye to the Doctor, underplayed. It's so human, but no one can relate to not looking at an angel in case your mum and dad suddenly disappear in New York, where, oh, you can't visit them again because reasons. It was never taken seriously for him, which annoyed me.
So what did you guys make of Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor?
He worked for the thing. I wouldn't say I'd want him as a Doctor. I think that's all we can say, really, isn't it?
What amazes me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that like a lot of the fandom really highly regard his Doctor. You see a lot of things where people go, well, he, if we can count the Shelker Doctor, then we can count the Rowan Atkinson Doctor. And you go, well, no, because Scream of Shelker was a serious production. That was supposed to be, had we not had the new series, that would have been, in some sense, canon. It was written as canon. This is written as a parody. This was never supposed to be the Ninth Doctor. It's mad that some people really love it and are like, oh, he was so good. And his Doctor seems very highly regarded from what I've seen online and everything. And I just find that bizarre.
Hugh Grant has recently said that he really regrets turning down Doctor Who.
Yeah, I heard that, because what was the reason he turned it down for?
He basically thought it was going to be camp and like The Curse of Fatal Death. And then he said he watched it because RTD offered him the role of the Ninth Doctor.
Oh, yeah, and he thought it wasn't going to work, didn't he?
Yeah, but remember, again, this was a completely different era. This is where film stars weren't really doing TV. Whereas nowadays, it's not unusual for Ewan McGregor to go and do a TV series.
Yeah.
And like even Hugh Grant has done one now with Very English Scandal. But back then, it would have seemed like a step down. So I guess maybe that played into it as well. Julia Sawalha was originally intended to replace Ace in Series 27.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, she was going to be a cat burglar character, which they've since done audios for on Big Finish, but not with her.
I knew about the character. I did know there's going to be the idea that the Ace was obviously going to go to Gallifrey, and then there was going to be this cat burglar woman. Because wasn't it like this story was like she was going to open a safe, and then the Doctor was going to be inside it, and then and all that. But I didn't know it was going to be Julia Sawalha. That pretty good casting, actually.
There's a bunch of Big Finish audios where they took Cartmell's ideas and they made a series of them.
I think they do that with a lot of things now, don't they, on Doctor Who? I mean, I did hear they were thinking of doing a season 6B, but they can't find anyone to do Patrick Troughton.
I know. Where can you get a Patrick Troughton impersonator these days?
There's no one. You've got a lot of these people who think they can do it.
I don't know. I think Fraser Hines is pretty good. It's worth a punt.
Fatal Death.
Jonathan Bryce is wearing his Tomorrow Never Dies costume under his cloak.
That's interesting. I suppose it is quite master-like, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was one thing I did make a couple of notes down, actually, about for tonight, and I've pretty much disregarded all of them. But I definitely would say that Jonathan Pryce, the highlight of that thing is Jonathan Pryce is a really good master. And I watched Tomorrow Never Dies recently. It keeps being shown on the few Brosnan films being shown on ITV late at night, and he was on, and I was watching, and I thought, actually, would have been a really good master.
Oh, he still could be.
Yeah, he's really good.
I loved him in Tomorrow Never Dies. I thought he was. I still love Elliot Carver. I just think he's one of the better villains they've had in there. Just steals the show every time. Every scene he's in, he steals it. No, but he was superb as the master. And thing is, he didn't play it any other way than straight as well, which is why, like, you get Rowan Atkinson being Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor, and then you've got obviously the rest of them, Richard E. Grant being Richard E. Grant, but he just played it so straight. I believe he certainly was. He followed Delgado.
See, I thought he was channeling Anthony Ainley myself.
Oh, there's a bit of that, isn't there? Yeah.
He's a classic series master, basically, and done really well. You're right. To me, Rowan Atkinson was playing it as Blackadder. That sort of smooth Blackadder goes forth character.
It's a bit of a looser Blackadder, yeah. Yeah. Say hello to the sofa of reasonable comfort. Yeah,
One thing I find quite funny is that they obviously have the shots in the TARDIS and the columns going up and down really erratically.
Oh, it's mental, isn't it?
If that's supposed to be a joke, or that is
it's a very fan film TARDIS concept.
Yeah, it's like someone underneath violent
going up and down like mad.
The sets are fan made. They were borrowed from fans.
Can you imagine these? Because it's definitely obviously pushed manually. The biceps on this on the operator of that must be fucking insane.
They're just bench pressing like Roydhead or something. Yeah, it is a bit crazy.
They're doing about 100 reps a take.
Oh, another thing worth mentioning is I obviously did my revision, and I watched this as well online today. And whatever version they've got online, it almost seems unfinished, like it's a final draft, because I found another version of it on another site, and it's completely different. So a couple of things are, the music's different. The shot when they opens the door and there's Daleks behind? There was only like 3 Daleks behind, but in the actual televised one, there's loads. They've kind of just used the image over and over again to make it look like there's a load of them. Well, the Daleks, obviously, because they're not quite right, are they? Were they borrowed or something?
They must have been.
Everything like the sets and the Daleks and everything were all borrowed from fans.
Other than the changing of the Doctors, there isn't much of a cast, is there, for Fatal Death? It's just the 3 of them.
And is it Roy Skelton who does the Daleks in that?
Yeah, this was his last time ever voicing the Daleks.
Oh, I'm surprised they haven't brought Rainbow back. So I think Nick Briggs' next step will be that. I think it's the right passage, isn't it? Isn't all the Zippy voices Dalek? I'm right in thinking.
Yeah, Roy Skelton sound like. Yeah, that's something you might know, Martyn, is how the idea about Fatal Death came about. Because at the same time, we've got to remember that a Doctor Who parody now on telly, fine, like loads of it, you'd see it a lot everywhere. It's still one of the most popular shows on the BBC. But for 1999, and you're talking about Comic Relief, which is a huge mainstream show back in the 90s, surely 25 million viewers. And even we talked about
when it was funny.
Well, yeah, don't even get me started on that. Jesus. But if you look back and you think of even when they did the Children in Need one, 1993, when Doctor Who had only been off the air a couple of years and it was an anniversary, they still thought, well, hang on, we need to put EastEnders into this so that we don't alienate our huge audience. But for 99, they've just gone, we're going to do a full parody of Doctor Who with let's be honest, with a lot of in-jokes for the fandom.
I'm not really sure, but I know originally it was just meant to be 10 minutes long.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but Moffat overwrote and overwrote and overwrote. And then Richard Curtis later begrudgingly said, okay, you can have 22 minutes. 99 was kind of when Tom Baker was having his big resurgence. And although I'd never really seen Doctor Who at that time, I knew what it was. I knew what a TARDIS was. I knew what a Dalek was. I knew who Tom Baker was.
Yeah.
So maybe it's always been there in the public consciousness. So maybe it's not that big of a leap that they would have put it on.
But that's a good point then. That actually goes to the point that you said when you saw it, you turned it off because you thought, well, what the hell's this? But that's the point, that you would have had millions of people watching it, and you had all these, like, I remember, funnily enough, I remember this, from like Boyzone were doing the song that year. Yeah, it was very 90s, and then suddenly you go, oi, hey, do you remember Doctor Who? No, it's been off the air for 10 years. Yeah? Do you remember it? Well, I kind of remember a bit of it. Well, here is a great 20-minute parody of it. Mr. Bean's in it. Is he being Mr. Bean? No. Is he being Blackadder? Sort of. He's not being Blackadder, is he? No. But look, it's the bloke from Tomorrow Never Dies. Yeah, that was a good film. What's he doing in this? Pretending to be a guy called the... Like, I can't imagine how it got on air or why Stephen Moffat did it, because I can't think of what Moffat was doing at the time.
The most recent thing would have been Press Gang.
Okay, so that explains.
Coupling was 2000, so maybe he was writing Coupling around the time that this broadcast.
It's very odd. I mean, maybe Mark Gatiss would have helped him with it, because like League of Gentlemen was getting quite big at the time, and obviously it was in comedy and things like that.
Yeah,
but it's still just a very strange thing to have happened. Very, very strange thing that happened in general. I mean, even people talk about how weird Dimensions in Time is, and those people are heathens and they're not to be trusted. At least it made sense. At least it was still the 30th anniversary. They mixed it with something that was very much in the mainstream media and that sort of thing, in EastEnders and everything. But this just comes out of nowhere. They just go, oh, no, it's Doctor Who. Oh, okay. The other thing is as well is that it did, and I think we touched on the video, apparently did have quite a successful video release.
Yeah, I saw it in the video shop back when they had video shops. And the cassette was there. Only when to be honest, I only went into that place because I saw Doctor Who VHS in there. What I said to my mum, can I? I've got pocket money. Can I buy another one? And came home.
He was only 24 at the time.
I was, yeah. Yes, well, well, that threw me. That did.
Oh, I phased you. So that's.
I felt I don't know whether I was insulted or flattered. I really shouldn't.
Both in weird ways. Timey-wimey stuff. So you said you were in there and you wanted to get a video from NBC.
Yeah, we walked in there, and once I just saw, like, I think it was Spearhead from Space. That was the first one I got. Went back there, got for some reason Resurrection of the Daleks. I think it's just because I saw Daleks on it. But yeah, I used to see that one, Curse of Fatal Death, there all the time.
And that's the thing that's interesting, right? And we talk about how it's highly regarded by the fans, and I think it's the fact that it was treated very much like. I would say honestly, it was given, and people might argue this, but I swear it was given the same respect as like Scream of Shelka. Like when the video came out, it was pushed quite a lot. And if you look at the video, you could, I'd say anyone listening, just Google image it. It's designed, that video, in the same way that the real series was designed. Do you know what I mean? With the logo and the way it's designed, it was almost like a bit of a pattern on there with a faded face of that. And I think it was because it was only 20 minutes. It was released alongside other sketches from two. So there was the Lenny Henry sketch was in there. There's a French and Saunders sketch, which I think they filmed during the Trial of a Time Lord. That's in there. And various other just sort of over the years BBC comedians sort of taking the mick out of Doctor Who. So it was quite a big video release. It was basically like all the parodies that the BBC had done and all these top comedians had done of Doctor Who all put onto one VHS, which I think made it quite highly regarded.
It hasn't made it to DVD, has it? Am I right in thinking that?
No.
I don't think so, no.
All right, so there's about 6 people listening. What would you recommend to them about Curse of the Fatal Death?
Well, I would say, actually, and I mean genuinely, I would say that it is a fantastic parody of... So one thing you can say is it's a fantastic parody of the classic series. And if you grew up watching the classic series, you can tell that Moffat is really very good, observant comedy writer. He's very good at like he did in Coupling. He's very good at picking up people's traits. The characters in Coupling are really well done because he's like a sponge. He picks up the way people talk, and it's done really well. And it was a shame to see that didn't come across great in Doctor Who from Stephen Moffat. I expected better characters, to be honest, because of how well his comedy writing was. You mentioned Press Gang earlier. The characters in that are so well written. So I would say it's brilliant, observant comedy about the classic series, and also I would probably say that it is worth watching from a new series perspective to see how many things like, oh, look, here's an echo into the future.
It's a good, fun 22 minutes that you'll think, how the did this happen? Which is what I describe about most things, really.